The London Borough of Hackney was formed from the metropolitan boroughs of Hackney, Shoreditch and Stoke Newington, and the metropolitan borough of Shoreditch included Hoxton and Haggerston, and this is my home.
My meaning of home is peace.
Safe, independent, mine.
When I first arrived in Hackney, it was a totally different place to what it is now.
Times were hard, but everybody was helping each other. If you didn't have a loaf of bread, you could go to Flat B and Flat B would give you a loaf of bread.
It's an emotional place. It's a place where we feel comfortable. It's a place where we feel we belong.
We need to have affordable housing so that our children, when they grow up, can be our neighbours.
The whole complex has changed. The whole demographics has changed in Hackney.
Social housing will always be in Hackney. Hackney is an area where working people can work, live comfortably and happily.
I would say Hackney showed me my life. I've lived it all in Hackney. Anything I do know, anything that's been embedded into me is straight from Hackney.
Having this, trust me, it's like solitude. I don't have to rely on nobody. I don't have to be phoning anyone and being like forcing myself to be around them so that I can have a roof over my head or anything. I don't have to deal with any of that. When I'm finished doing whatever I'm doing outside, I've got my key, can come in, open the door, come in, boom. Kitchen's there, bathroom's there, toilet's there, living space. I'm humble about it. It's a blessing.
So this picture, I've got my boy there, Charlie, and he must be about 7 there. We'd moved into another flat, we were getting evicted from that. Somebody just mentioned to me that I should approach the council and maybe I could get housed as a single parent, which I was. When they showed me the flat, it was in a state that everything was hanging, and when I said to the guy, "What else are you going to show me?" and he went, "No, this is it, mate, you take this or nothing." So I took it.
This property changed my life, basically. It's given me stability. It's given me somewhere that I can come back and call home, to invite friends. I've got great neighbours. It's been a saving grace for me in times when things have been really tough for me.
When I came to Hackney, it was really different because they speak different languages. Because you see green eyes, blue eyes, black people, and then it was really good, really, yeah.
I've started here, I'm like one of the foundations that's like lived in the block of flats surrounding us, and obviously I've seen the changes happen over the years, so I'm seeing, my whole row of neighbours go from everyone I know to literally not knowing one person on the balcony. They've made prices sky high, they've made rent sky high. You don't feel like you fit in.
The other day we was having a meeting. We had a meeting in Broadway Market in a pub with some of the older boys, and they were saying like, "Can we go in the pub?" I go, "Yeah, it's your pub. It's your area. Why can't you go in the pub?" And when they were sitting in there, they could not believe they were actually sitting in the pub in their area, which is really strange. I had to hand wash our clothes with fairy liquid. We had no cooker, so we were eating McDonald's pretty much every night, or kebabs and just street food. I went to Connections in Dalston. I spoke to this woman called Melrose Gray, who I love. She reminds me of my nan. She was just so warm and lovely. So she made it her priority to house me.
I run a over 55 club. We start off with exercise, we have a meal, we play dominoes, we talk amongst ourselves, and I think it's important that As a community, we come together, we socialize together. I think that is vital to try and eliminate loneliness.
At the moment, we're working on a vegetable plot. We've got these grow boxes at the back of one block of flats. Charlie, who's got one of these boxes, I think he's about 80, 85, and he's really dedicated to it, and it gets him out of his house. You know, I just think it's wonderful that people like Charlie are getting out and getting involved with people that live in his block and people that, you know, live up the road and have got a box there. And it's just nice. It's a good way to bring the community together.
We're sitting in a community garden. We approached Hackney under the Regeneration. Could they give us some space? And we started growing then. And then people started seeing that we were growing and there was a garden happening. We have now got up to 40 people on the estate growing. This is a picture of mine and Vince's wedding day on the 2nd of November 1991. It was also my birthday, one of the happiest days of my life. And we were together 27 years before he passed away.
After the Second World War, the provision of good quality state-owned housing was an important strand of the new welfare state. In the inner cities, a lot of older housing was cleared and new estates of modern, brick-built municipal housing replaced it. New tenants saw it as a step up. They had more room and indoor toilets.
I have grown up with pigeons all my life. My brother had previously had pigeons as a hobby. My mother in particular wanted to look after them, carry on with them. The photograph I'm holding is that of my elder brother, who unfortunately was killed on active service for the Royal Navy in the last war. I was born in the borough of Shoreditch 80 years ago at number 80 Brunswick Street, and we lived in that premises until the start of the Second World War. Our home where we were living in Brunswick Street had been badly damaged, and we were rehoused into a small house in Queensbridge Road, number 50.
There's the noise. When I was born in 1934, we lived in Hoxton. My old brother and I, we both had rheumatic fever, and because number 1 Ivy Lane was very, very damp, they wouldn't allow me out of the hospital until other accommodation were found for the family, and that's why we moved over to Haggerston Road.
We used to have chickens, rabbits, and at one time some ducks. They were for the kitchen table, and people did the same in the surrounding area. My dad used to be called upon to do the necessary killing and preparing when people had their rabbits and chickens ready for the table. The area where we actually lived in Queensbridge Road were small houses, some bomb damaged, but most people found them livable. That area is completely demolished, and where we used to live is now part of a sports complex.
We came here through my mother because she needed to be near her mother, and it was brand new. It would have been a feeling of satisfaction of a new home, a bigger home.
The block of flats or masonettes we are in now was built in 1965. In January 1966 we moved into this masonette. It was obviously spanking brand new. To have an indoor toilet and hot and cold running water was a sheer luxury.
The second big wave of house building began in the 60s under Harold Wilson's government. Between 1965 and 1970, 1.3 million new homes were built by local borough councils like Hackney. This saw the beginning of a lot of estates with a mixture of prefabricated homes and high-rise blocks.
Just an aircraft on flight deck, just coming in to land and getting hooked up on the... There's damage after a kamikaze attack on the carrier. Trouble is with a lot of these, I'll be honest, you just want to forget. I was originally living in Forest Road. We had a child, we needed a bedroom, so we did a mutual exchange with a tenant from Middleton Road. We just swapped flats. And then Hackney decided to pull down all the Victorian houses and build flats.
The old Holly Street was developed at a time when architects and local authorities and planners had rather grand ideas about how you could change the nature of man by the environment into which they were put. But living in them was something different.
They were snake blocks. They had corridors which were nearly a kilometre long. Children with mopeds were using the corridors as traffic roads. The council put doors up to stop that. Those doors were then either damaged, wedged back, or broken off altogether. Downstairs, for fire regulations, they had kick-out panels so that you could escape if there was a fire in your flat. What people failed to remember was that those kicking panels could also be kicked in from outside, and that's where a lot of the burglaries in those properties took place. This became a very bad property to live in.
When Margaret Thatcher and the Conservatives won the election in 1979, they made the selling of council property a priority. They introduced the 1980 Housing Act, which gave tenants massive discounts if they bought their council property. Between 1980 and 1996, 2.2 million tenants bought their homes. Councils were not allowed to use the money they made from council house sales to build new houses. They had to pay off their debts with it, so all that social housing was lost. Banks were reluctant to give mortgages to tenants in prefabs or high rises. This was the majority of social housing councils were left with.
If you've been a council tenant for at least 3 years, you'll have the right by law to buy your house, and that's that. And you'll be able to buy it at a price that's 1/3 below market value.
I think a lot of people would say that the rot began with Margaret Thatcher's right to buy. In principle, I have nothing against right to buy, because I think it's good for people to be able to buy a home if they want to, and for them to kind of feel that they've got even more of a stake in their community. I think what was really bad about right to buy was the fact that the councils weren't able to reinvest the money that they got back from it, so they weren't able to keep building social homes.
Once the government decided councils weren't allowed to build homes again, and in fact were forced to sell homes through right to buy, we actually saw the decline in the development of the nation's housing stock and a rise in homelessness.
When you sell a property like this, you're essentially taking it away from somebody else, because when if I leave for some reason, or if I die, this property then gets passed on to somebody else that needs it, just like I needed it. And to take that opportunity away from somebody, it's not acceptable.
Between 1979 and 1997, the Conservatives slashed £19 billion from the budget for maintenance of council properties. So when things were broken, they weren't fixed. Add to this the impact the recession of the 1980s had on a lot of the residents of these estates, and it's easy to understand how they soon fell into a sorry state.
I was saying to somebody yesterday, you'd be laying in your bed and cockroaches would be falling on top of you. You'd go in the kitchen and switch the lights on and the kitchen would come alive. In your fridges, your cookers, you couldn't leave anything open. It was a nightmare.
Sometimes I let them go downstairs, you know, in the cage down there, but it's either you go down there with them or they don't go at all. Because you can't, I wouldn't let them go down there on their own. I can't let them go down to play downstairs on their own, and I can't let them play on the landing on their own either. I wouldn't let them anyway. It's too dangerous.
We had a few people who actually broke into flats because it wasn't very secure. Drug problems, prostitution, vandalism, people pinching cars and that sort of thing.
Nightingale Estate was one that was also riddled with problems. But residents there, led by Alice Burke, have been an integral part of their regeneration.
In an attempt to tackle this problem, New Labour introduced the Decent Homes programme, which set minimum standards that all social housing had to meet. Councils had 3 strategies to pay for this. 1. Giving council houses to a housing association to manage. They called this large-scale voluntary transfer, or LSVT. 2. A private finance initiative, where a private developer is allowed to build homes to sell on council land on the condition that they provide a certain amount of social housing. Or they could use an arm's-length management organisation, like Hackney Homes, which means the council still owns the homes, but they are managed by a separate body, the ALMO. Tenants were told this would lead to the improvements their properties needed, like new kitchens and bathrooms, and even double glazing.
Our third finalist this evening is the Holly Street Comprehensive Estates Initiative in Hackney.
I think the whole success for this Holly Street area was the fact that the community was involved, the community was listened to.
We'd done all the choice of everything, and front gardens, back garden. It was like being in a different world, really. It was just so exciting for everybody.
Since 2006, Hackney Homes have modernised more than 15,000 properties, and lots of existing blocks have been refurbished from top to bottom. On top of these improvements to existing housing, Hackney have at last been able to start building social housing again, and 3,000 new homes are being built on 18 different sites across the borough.
This was one of the pioneering schemes for Hackney Council. I think 3 years ago they started to look at regenerating their major housing estates. It's been an amazing process with the local residents. We met them first in the interview, and then I think since met them probably 50 times.
Listened to a hell of a lot of what we said. We had no choice, actually, to be quite truthful, because we are quite a forceful group.
I think it's a very exciting programme where local authorities are staying in control of the master planning and the design process, and then actually delivering fantastic new homes for their local residents.
We're happy that Hackney Council have done it, and we're part of it, and we're one of the first ones to do it. I mean, people look at this building and think it's all for sale. It's not, this is pure social housing.
There has to be a future for social housing in a city like London. London is a city that requires people to hold it together, that are people that don't necessarily earn the salaries that at the moment you need to live in this city. The cleaners, the nurses, the police, the paramedics, the teachers, social welfare workers, council workers. they're in a socioeconomic situation where at the moment they just can't afford to live unless there is social housing, unless there is affordable housing in the city.
Social housing has become stigmatised, estates have become stigmatised because the kind of the balance, that kind of mix that was there before has almost completely receded now, and actually, you know, people don't think of estates as mixed communities, and therefore people don't fight for them in the same way as they used to, and I think it's been easier for politicians to make further cuts to social housing because people no longer think that social housing is something that they would ever be able to get.
There's a lot of rhetoric about why should poor people live in expensive areas, but we've always believed in a mixed London, and you know, it is still affordable to develop mixed communities in London if there's the political will. And I think that's what we need to see more of, supporting boroughs like Hackney to do that. And you know, we believed in that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's, I think, something that we need to return to.
I'm concerned as to how it progresses over the 50 years. I do hope that the powers that be manage the change with some sort of common sense, in so much as that they move with the times.
The home's deeper than what it is. It doesn't actually mean a building, a block of flats, your bed. Home could just be just from where you've started, where you're used to, where you've grew up.
It's good to create some form of change, but there needs to be a balance when you're doing that.
And I think it's important that as a community, we come together, we socialize together. I think that is vital.
I can't comprehend what would have happened if I didn't have what I have now. That's like an alternate timeline. Would I be in jail? Would I be dead? I've been blessed with what I have. This is my first property, so it's a foundation, something for me to build on and make a life for myself.
Home to me is love, family, community.
Family, love and community.
Family and security and peace.
Safe, independent, mine. Yeah.
I think I would suggest to the mayor that he looks at the community as a whole, regardless of whether they are leaseholders or rent payers. They all need each other, including the council.